Welcome to the Belfry Hockey Podcast. My name is Daryl Belfry, and we are in season 3, episode 8 now of the Belfry Hockey Podcast. And what I want to talk about today is drill design. And drill design for me has been a real process over many, many years, and I'm still learning more and more about drill design. And I think it is a bit of a lifelong process to figure out different and better ways in different situations. And for me, I don't like to pre-draw out my drills. I prefer to kind of make them up as I'm going along. I like to have an idea where I want to go, and then I get a starting point, and then start to add the pieces that I want, or the progressions that I'm looking for. And that comes from a lot of experience of how to set up drills based on what I'm seeing. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle of this, then I'll go back to the beginning, and then I'll tell you kind of where I want to go. So where I've been in the space I've been in the last 10 years has been, I don't draw out any drills. I kind of know what I want to do. I know where I want to end up. And then what I've tried to do is think of my drills as game situations. So because I study so much game video all year round, I have a bank of re- repeated plays that happen in games, like all types of repeatable actions, skills, plays that are recurring. And when I'm with, whether it's an individual player, whether I'm with a group, this is how I see when I'm in the practice. I see the game situation, and then that game situation has certain elements, elements to it. There's usually a key piece that needs focus on, either because of issues that surround the individual player or players, that there's a capacity that needs to be enhanced, there's skills that need to be learned in order to be able to execute it, or there's just a key execution piece that I'm going to kind of anchor everything to. So that's how I start. And then from there, I have so now I have two real key pieces of information. I have a game situation that's in my head. I then also have the key execution piece that I know I want to kind of anchor the drill to. And then now I need to know how I want to get into this, and how I want to get or progress it or get out of it and into the next phase of its development. So when I'm in it, that's what I'm doing. And the experience factor for me is how to take a game situation and turn it into an actual drill. And for me, what I needed to understand was the connectors. So a connector is just like, how is it going to start? And then how does it loop? So if it's a drill, you want it to have I prefer to have my drills like loop. I like it when things kind of go repeatedly and it happens on its own, because as I've said in the previous podcast, I want to take myself out of the operation of the drill as early as possible. I don't want to be standing there blowing a whistle or saying go. I don't want to be doing that. The player should already know when the plays to go next, and I usually give them that information, and then that's it. It goes on its own. So that's a loop. So a loop could be as simple as a second puck. The play operates, and then it's going out of maybe one corner, and then a second puck is in the other corner. So now the next group goes to the other corner, and it goes from one side to the other. And then I say the next group that goes, just spot your puck, and off you go, so that I don't have to be the one that's dumping the puck in the corner. Because as soon as you do that, you're now operating the drill. Once you're operating the drill, it's very difficult to be the operator and the teacher. So I try to eliminate myself as the operator. So I just like that's a simple way to do it. Another way to do it is to use the same puck, but there's a way in which that it's clear that the drill has come to an end for the one group, and they start the next group. So if it's like, let's say it's a half ice or blue line in type drill situation that I'm running, then the loop becomes, after you execute what it is that I want you to do, I need you to get that same puck, make a play through each other, and then pass it to the next guy in line, and then that guy then starts it to go to the next round. So that's how it loops. So I'm always looking for a way to loop it. One of the things that I also really like to do is I like to have the lines out of like out of the middle of the ice. So for example, like I prefer to have it all the players on like one side of the rink, and try not to have players like all over in different spots. Like I used to have it where like I'd have one group on one side of the rink, and then the other group was on the other side of the rink, and then off they would go. And then what would happen is you get a disruption every time the play goes anywhere near the walls on those sides, because you got all these players in the way. So what I like to do is put all the players on one side, and then plus it's easier for me to manage myself, and it's easier to control like the next, right? And then I also have one whole set of boards plus the end ball, so 3/4 of the rink I basically have as open boards, that the boards can be freely utilized, and then I pack everyone kind of between the blue lines on the wall. That is a very common like starting point for me. I like it like that. I prefer not to have it be a situation where, like I said, there's lines everywhere. I don't like lines everywhere. Just one line. Everybody starts from here. It kind of funnels itself to the middle, and then everyone kind of piles in from there, however many players are to go. One of the things I will also do is I'll set up an initial play that's not to do with what I actually want. And then that play leads me into what I actually want. And then there's a connector that brings the play out to the next group. So what I'll often do is I'll have everybody lined up like that. I'll have, like, let's say for example it's an exit drill. So maybe I'm concerned about wingers on the boards making plays. So rather than set up all these lines that start everybody like near the boards, and it's clear, like, I used to have it where if I was going to do board work like for wingers, I would have everybody lined up, like the people that were going, they'd be lined up like in line with the dots, like near or just above the top of the circle. And then I would have whatever the drill was that wrapped the puck around, and then they had to field it and then make whatever the next play was. Now I don't do that. What I prefer to do is have a different type of play that leads them into that. So, for example, it could be an entry. So there's a play in the neutral zone, the puck gets sent in. Now it's a retrieval. The retrieval and the neutral zone play really don't have anything to do with what I really want. Then the guy on the retrieval, he then, has some deception, like he's going to go behind the net and then rims it. On the rim, the players who are really supposed to be going, they have slid into the play, and they play it live like it's a dump retrieval, and now they're on the defensive side of that. So, they position themselves in accordance to what that game situation would be like. Rather than put them in lines, at the top of the circle, I have them slide in as though they're recovering their position, like on a back check, and then the play starts. Then the connector piece might be after that play. So after that play, you then become like the retrieval guy, or it goes the reverse. You know what I mean? So it's either like you do the entry first, then you do the target, you connect the play, and you're out. So I like a lot of that kind of stuff where the drill has a sequence and it flows, and everybody kind of gets a chance to do everything. I really like drill formats that are like that. And so I stick to a lot of that stuff. And then I'll do the connectors. And then that allows me to be in the play. And when I mean in the play, like I want to be teaching. So I'm either like in a situation like this, it's kind of a quarter ice situation. I'm gonna be like in the interior hash marks or in thereabouts, and I'm gonna be watching this whole thing play out, and I'm in line with the target play, so that I can bark out instructions, or when it's done, I can have the player come to me, and we're out of the threat of what's happening, and I can be discussing what I wanted to see or what corrections I want to do or what have you. So it's just I'm very conscious of where I want to be in relationship to how the drill is playing out. And like I said, I'm not responsible for running the drill. The drill is running itself, so I don't have to worry about what's happening next. They already know. So then that frees me up to kind of go into the spaces that I need to be to actually teach and to get involved. And I like to be moving, and I like to be in the play a little bit, like not in it, but I'm like outside of it, but I'm moving. Like I have a pulse. I'm not just standing still dumping pucks in. I like to be moving, and I go to the line, and then I come out of the line, I go back to my spot, and then I'm following a player out, or like I find that when I'm like that, I'm really at my best. It gives me an energy. Players can feed off that energy, and I feel like I'm at my best, more at my best when that's the case. So I try to limit the number of drills that I have where there's lines. I'd rather have these slide in, slide out type plays. Kind of feels like a shift, but there's like a target play that's occurring. That's really what we're trying to work on. And I have an entry into it, and I have an exit getting out of it, or a connector, and then the players come out, and the next group is constantly coming in. It allows me also, because for years I'd run the ice times myself, right? I still do run a lot of ice times myself, which there's a lot of benefits to that, and there's a lot of drawbacks to it as well. But what I like about running it myself is I can get one end going, and then I can go and get the other end going, and then I can just kind of toggle back and forth between the two ends. I really do like that, and I don't always like to be on top of the players too. Like one of the things I really like, and this is one of the benefits of kind of doing it yourself, is that you're then not over coaching. And what I mean by that is like if you have someone that's like on top of the players all the time, then like there's an over coaching there. I want there to be some like figuring out a little bit. So I get it started. I get the cadence of the drill going. I set the expectations. I get the techniques that I want hammered home of what I want done, and then I leave and go get the other end, monitor them, make sure that they're up and running, get them going, and then I come back. When I come back, like there's been an opportunity for players to kind of get it started, get things figured out, and then when I come over, I can watch a couple, and then I already know what adjustments I want to make it go faster. Maybe they're doing it really well, so I might add something into it right away because they're already past that. Maybe they're really struggling, so it gives me a chance to kind of dig into some of those details. But I do really like that, and I get selfish sometimes where I could have some help and more help, but I sometimes prefer not to because I do like this whole idea of having players figure it out. And then there's also things too, like when a drill's going on and I really like what's happening, I will stop. I'll just stop. The drill continues. The things are going on. I stop talking, I stop barking, I stop moving, and I just kind of separate myself and I kind of get on as a fly on the wall, and I want to hear the players. I want to hear the players. I want to see how they do it, and if I've done my job beforehand or as the group starts to get going, they'll start to know like at this time I like what's going on. That's a time we need to ramp it up. So that's where I need that interpersonal leadership to start. They start barking at each other to get going, get faster. They start, talking to each other more. And so when I stop talking, a lot of times the group gets really quiet. And then I maybe just say, "Hey, it's too quiet," and then I shut up again and I let them see, and then they start talking to each other, and I love that. I think that's a great way to have things go. And then if it's a drill, like one of the things that as I get things going and the game situation is moving, I'll move the target movement that I want. So if we were doing this like rim retrieval for a rim play for the winger, I would then make the focus then on the center. So I would have the winger set up, then I would make it on the center. Then I might make it on the stretch weak side forward. Then I might have some more detail that surrounds how I want the D to operate. There could have pressure on the D, and then they have to use some skating skill and maneuvers before they come out. And then maybe they could have an option of whether they rim it or whether they escape the pressure and they make an outlet pass. And the winger has to have their timing down. The center has to have their timing down, etc. I might tell the winger or the center, at first I want you like low and slow, but then I want you wide and fast. So I change the routes, and then I talk about the I might have the center come in and he has to stop like he's in D zone coverage, and then the puck rims up, and then now they got to sprint, they got to get up the dot line, create an availability there. Like there's all kinds of those things that I really like to do. Then what I like to do is from there I'll start adding elements and pieces to it, and then we might have a situation also where then I might like gamify it a little bit, where I try to turn up the heat on it. I create maybe some pressure in a different way, or I make one team against the other, so the pressure is literally trying to win the puck, and now you're really putting pressure on the reads. Okay, the winger, the D is under pressure. They're trying to rim it around, or they kind of escape the pressure and trying to make a direct pass, but we don't know what's going to happen. Then I have the other, I like my F2 on the forecheck. Like they're responsible for that winger because we're going to do the pressure coming from the side, or maybe I don't have that guy. Maybe I use the D and the D's pinching down. Like I'm mixing it up all the time. Maybe I have also the weak side. It's a weak side fold, so I could have the D and the inside. They could weak side fold and come over and get that winger. So now the winger has pressure coming from all different types of ways. I could just mix that up all the time. Meanwhile, that winger is fielding rim after rim after rim after rim. I really like that. In a drill like that, I also like to go one side, other side, and then out. So the winger becomes the center, and the center becomes the winger on the other side, and that so they are doing both roles, and then out they go. So I like to do stuff like that. So I'm very fluid in my drill design, and I'm stacking and I'm just adding pieces, and then ultimately I'll get to where I want it to get very uncertain and competitive, and then they have to like really figure things out, and then I can poke holes in it. It's like the game will poke holes in where I want to go. And then I love to finish with an individual skill drill based on the hole that I see in the game. That's a real key distinguishing piece of what I like to do in terms of drill design and how the practice like plays out. So I'll go in and I'll maybe say like, okay, in this case, what I didn't like the most was I didn't like the curvilinear skating. I didn't think the center timing with their footwork was very good, and I didn't like the weak side fold. So then that becomes a drill where it's an angling drill, and a support drill at the same time, and I'm getting the arc skating, arc support, and arc pressure, and I do both of those, and I finish with a drill like that. That's kind of like that really explains a lot of what you might see when you see me work in a group. I really like to do that. I like to eliminate lines, have people sliding in and sliding out. The other thing I love to do as part of that is I'll say, so for this drill we need 3, and then I change. So they all already know that, they can see. Okay, so it's going to be a D on the retrieval. We need a winger on the wall, and then I need a center. Okay, so then they can figure out how that works, and then I'll say, okay, then I want to get pressure, and then I also want to add a weak side fold. So now we're up to 5, and then I want to pressure. Now we're at 6. So I'm just telling them these are the number of players that we need. So now they're in the line that's standing there, and they're trying to figure it out, because invariably, especially if it's a group that I haven't worked with before, they won't know when to go. And so that's a teachable moment for me. I'm like, listen, I told you I need 3, or I told you I now need 5. And then you guys got to figure it out in the line. There's nobody there to tell you. I just want 5. And then what I'll tell them to do is, when the drill goes on, so when the play in front of you is going, I want the next 5 to slide out almost like an on-deck circle, but they slide out like in the neutral zone, and then they're waiting to move in. So they're already kind of getting out there. And what happens is then the group starts talking to each other. Because again, like that communication, that peer teaching, the peer talking to each other, I value that so much. I'm looking for any way to do it. So by having it uncertain as to who's next, they have to organize it. And invariably the ball gets dropped because they're not talking, or someone's not paying attention. The guy didn't go at the right time, didn't know what the drill was trying to like figure it out. Meanwhile, you got, I have 5 people going in the drill, so it doesn't take long before it's your turn again. Plus, I might have both groups going both ends going at the same time. So now, like, we're really down to, like, we only have maybe 20 players on the ice. Now, like, it's really, it's really happening fast. You don't have a lot of time to figure this out. So then that's where the talking comes in. And then you start to hear, hey, I'll go this spot, I'll go that spot. And so then you start to see, like, the center becomes the D becomes the winger, the D becomes the center. And I love that. I think that that's important. They just fill in the role as they're going, because that's how the game is played. We can't control always who's going to be back first. We can't control who's going to get there first. So you have to be comfortable in each of those roles. So that's a really that's kind of where I've been living. Now, prior to that, where I would start the whole journey from was, I would do a lot of line work. So I would have it very clear as to who was going next and what their role was. And this is where drills in general, they run into trouble, like they get criticized, because there's not a lot of thinking involved, because, hey, when you're in this line, you execute this pattern, and then when you're done, you go to that line and you execute that pattern. So there's not a lot of thinking, there's not a lot of reading going on. This is where you get this whole, the criticism, and a lot of that criticism is warranted. But there is a place for that sometimes, where you can have an assembly line type drill that gets it started. That could be your lead in, where it gets started. One of the drills that I've done where I really started to like it was, and this is, I'm flipping back to where I am now, is I'll sometimes have it where everyone, like, there's 3 people in the drill. The first puck goes in, it goes around, and they do their thing. Then another puck goes in, and they have to rotate. So then another player is doing they rotate their position. Then a third puck goes in, and they rotate their position. So everybody's done everything. Now we start. Now the rep starts right after that. And then that's how, so they got into it, they executed it, they got all the key pieces, everybody got a rep in, then we execute the drill the way it was intended, then I have a connector and I'm done. And it just gets that whole thing where I can get there. Sometimes I want those reps. But that's where I go back to where I was before. Like where I was before, I wanted the practice to be clean and clear. I knew everyone knows where they're supposed to be. You execute your role in whatever it is that you're doing. It's easy for me to control, and off we go. But as my experience played itself out, I evolved in my drill design. So I think that one of the ways, depending on where the coach is in their progression in drill design, you want to move away from that single structure. You're trying to get away from that single structure. However, you're not sure how to. So one of the ways in which you do it is just like I said, you set up the single structure because you're familiar with that, and then you find a way to turn that single structure live, and then you connect it. And then the next group goes into the single structure, which you're comfortable with. You have a way in which you turn it live, and then there's a connector. And then that's a very simple way of being able to start pushing yourself and pushing your own drill design into another level, and trying to get yourself a little bit removed from the single structure and getting into some other ideas. Another way is the whole like idea between offense defense out, or defense offense out, depending on what it is you're doing. That's an excellent way of getting out of some single structure, because now inside the same rep, the players are executing multiple different roles. They're flipping from one thing to the next. There's a read as to who I am, like what's my role in the play. And that's a really important piece that's so important in hockey. Is hockey sense, to a large degree, is knowing your role in the play and knowing how your role is going to change as the play evolves. So when the puck is in one corner, I know I am this player. I'm the strong side defenseman. My job is to make a play at this puck defensively, try to make a contact, force a loose puck. That's my job. Get the guy that I'm checking to stop. Okay, now the play changes sides. Once that play changes sides, I'm no longer the strong side defenseman. I'm the weak side defenseman. So now, how does my role change, and how do I anticipate? Now I get over there and I realize, like, we don't have a center. So I'm the weak side defenseman, but I'm also have an opportunity to be the center. And so now you see me reading where my opportunity is to become the center. In practice, we want to provide opportunities where they have to read what their role is, and as the role changes, they anticipate that role change, and they start to execute that next play. And that's such a critical part of the way the game is played, and building hockey sense. You can do it through your drill design, and again, getting out of that single structure. So anytime you see a drill that you like, that has lines, and the lines are all over the ice, and each line has a specific job that line has to do, now you're looking for, when I see something like that, I'm like, we need a role change, and then we need to find a way to get this live. So it's almost like there's a lot of times where I'll set something up on one side of the ice that has all those like elements of it, where it's single structure, it's designed for repetitive motion. The player's trying to perfect the skills and the technique inside of that play. And then as soon as that happens, there's like role change, because I have it where there's a sequence where each of the three players is changing roles, and then boom, as soon as we change sides, now it's live. So not only are you changing the role, but you're also then changing the side. Now it's live, and then there's a connector, and then now the play is coming back in, and it goes into that side that it just exited, and now it starts off again, single structure, get the reps in, then you go to get the roles changing, and then bang, change sides. Once it changed sides, it's live. Now once it's live, it's out. And then there's lots of things you can add to that. You can have pressure. You can have speed as a dynamic. You can tell them they want the puck on the wall. You can tell them you don't want the puck on the wall. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to encourage more problem solving. They have to group problem solve. The role is changing, so they got to talk to each other, and that's what I like. I like an ice time that has a lot of chatter with it, and I can force that chatter by the way I set up the drills. And because if I force you to have to change roles and you don't know, when that's going to happen, then there has to be talk of the players are talking about who's doing what. And I used to also set up drills where I would say, okay, puck goes in the corner. First guy in does this. Second guy in does that. Third guy goes in does that. Which is great. The problem is they're all in a straight line, so they know which role they're going to be as they're going. Then I have a drill where I say it's the same concept, but rather than put them in a line, I take the line, put it on the boards like the half wall, and then I say, okay, three players are going to jump out, and you're going to pass the puck to each other. So I want to see just a lot of movement in a small area, and you're one-touch passing. And then, at some point, one of you will lay a puck in the corner, and that's how it starts. So I'm not even going to say go or, hey, when I say dump it in, then that's when you're going to dump it in. I don't like that because I don't want to be running the drill. I want them to run the drill. So I'd say, pass it a few times, make sure everybody gets a chance to touch it, and then let's lay it in and let's see what happens. So you don't know what your role is going to be until the puck gets dumped in and where you are in proximity to where the play is and where those roles are. And so I love that, and those are the kinds of things that I like to do inside of that drill design. Now, so that's kind of where it was. I was in single structure. I had everything kind of laid out, and a lot of the pieces were where a lot of my drill design was reliant upon where I had the lines. So I have lines like in the four corners. I'd have lines on the four neutral zone blue lines. Then I used the dots as a thing. So I was big on the ice markings. I want, the lines were in relationship to where I wanted, and then I would set up, where I wanted or how I wanted the players to kind of slide in and out of this. And that was I did that probably for 10 years. I knew the types of drills I could run from those positions. And then depending on what I wanted to do or where I was taking that practice and where I was taking the progression, I would just move the line. So it'd start off in four corners, could start off with the two corners and the two blue lines in both ends. So now there's 8 lines. I could have a line in the middle of the ice and the two like at center, which could be the D, for example. That could be all the D, and then I'd have the 2 forward lines on the blue lines. And then I'd have some whatever play that I was doing. It was just very simple for me to understand my drill design, and I could do it on the fly, and based on the drill setups, and then I could just move things around how I wanted it from there. And then, like I said, once I started to get the lines out and have this like starting play, that's when things really started to evolve. And I thought my practices got a lot richer in terms of reads, problem solving, a lot more talking amongst players, a lot more talking in the players about role changes and all those sorts of things, which that's just the start of it. We haven't even got into players like actually communicating with each other about what happened. So that's kind of where it started, how it evolved, and then I obviously figured out the parallel structures, and I could mix those in at any time. I could have two things going on. Like one of the things I used to love to do to set up my parallel structure is I'd do a split. I would have one group in one end doing one piece of it, then I'd have the other group in the other end doing the other piece of it, and then those roles would flip. So then I would say switch, and then the group that was in the one end doing one part, they would then flip, and they would be stay in the same end, but they would be doing what the other guys were doing. So those roles would change, and then I would bring it all together, and that was the drill. The drill would then connect. So I'd do the pieces separate, and then put the pieces together, turn it live, and now we're good. I got the reps. I was able to set up the drill design from a clear role perspective. When you're in this line or when you're here, this is what you're doing. It's clear what you're working on, and we go through that, and then you switch. Now you're working on something else, and then now when it's time, I turn it live. You don't know what you're doing until you're doing it, and this is kind of the test. I want to see kind of where we're at, and that's where I get the parallel structure going. We get two opposite groups going against each other, but they had practiced and got all the stuff, all the pieces put together beforehand. So that was a big breakthrough for me. And then, like I said, once I got those pieces put together, then I could figure out. Then once I got the lines out of the line and just got them out of the way, and I freed up the boards, because I find when I took the lines off the boards, I used the boards more. And we all know how much the game is played on the wall. And so I found that I had more competitive plays along the wall that were occurring inside the drill. I had more pucks coming around the boards that had to be fielded. I just used the boards much more. And I found that enriched the skill development, because we obviously need to become more effective in wall play. Players need to be more comfortable with being able to read the ice in small space and understand where pressure is coming from, problem solve pressure that's coming into a tighter area, and etc. So those were really important breakthroughs for me, and I started to see more and more of the benefit. And then the other part about it is it's so easy to gamify things from there. So one of the things I love about having the players not in these like funny spots all the time. When I say funny, I mean like, drill 1, the lines are at the 4 blue line stripes. Then drill 2, the lines are in the 4 corners. Then drill 3, the lines, I have a 1 line through the middle of the ice, and then the other are on the 4 blue line stripes. And then, drill 4 is, I have maybe the lines are on the blue lines facing each other. Maybe it's something like that, and it's like a neutral zone, something or other, or it goes into the ends. Whatever the case may be, I spent so much time moving the players around and getting them to figure out how the rotations would work and all that sort of stuff. It was just killing the practice flow, because I don't like a lot of time in between. I don't draw drills on a board. I just communicate it just like I'm talking now. I just say, hey, you're here. I need these many players. This is what the play I want that we're going to be working on. This is how I want what the skills are. Here's how we're going to work on it. It goes this way first, then it goes over here and does this, and then here it turns live. Here's how you connect it. Off you go. And then we walk through it once, and then we're good. That's kind of how I like to do it. And so by not having all these like funny like drill setups, I was reducing a lot of that time, and I could just change drills right away. I could just change it right there on the fly. Within a very short period of time, I was already into the next drill, and it just makes such a difference. And then I can spend that time, players are getting more reps, and I can do a lot more teaching. And especially when I take myself out of the drill. Now I can run a practice, the whole thing, and never be part of the drill at all. I never dump a puck in. I don't say go. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm in the drill and I'm teaching the whole time. And I run the whole practice like that. And that was always a goal of mine. It took a long time for me to learn how to do that and do it effectively. But once you learn how to do that, it is unreal the amount of coaching and teaching that you can actually do. And then what ended up happening, and this is kind of that like full circle moment, I realized I have so much time to be teaching. I'm actually like over coaching right now. Like I'm in these players' ear. I can be so involved. So now I got to figure out ways to get out of it. So I'm in it, I get it going, I get it fired up, they understand what I want. I'm bringing energy also to it to get the pace and the cadence the way I want it, and then boop, I'm out. I'm either down the other end or I just separate myself and I stop talking. I don't say a thing. I just let it go, let it breathe, let's see if the players start to take it over. I start maybe adding pieces and elements, all that kind of stuff. That's what I started to figure out. So it's a real process, drill design and learning how to do it. But the number one thing that I say like really changed for me was when I stopped looking for drills and started looking for game situations. And then I had a way from the game situation, I needed to just learn how to get into it and out of it and create the connectors. And if you can learn how to do the connectors, that's where the real drill design actually happens. And that's where you can really go from being a very like methodical coach in the way in which you do things, where you go in and you have um, you start off the practice and you go to the board and you draw up a drill, players go into it, then you do a demo, then after the demo then the players get going, then of course you need to stop it, maybe you got to then change sides, so now all the pucks got to get shifted over to the other side. I mean the amount of wasted time with all that, then you stop that drill, now you go and you're right back to the beginning, got to draw the drill up and etc. It's just, to me that's really methodical and I don't want that. I want there to be a lot of pace, energy, and it breathes on its own, and I want the players to feel that energy change. And then one of the other things that really stood out for me, I used to be really bad with water breaks, like terrible, to the point where like players would be like completely like dehydrating like in front of me, and I'm like, oh my god, like, and the players like, all right, coach, like, are you gonna do a water break? I'm like, well, I'm so into this. No, and then I started to say like, what, I don't know when you're thirsty. So you just get water whenever you want. I don't know when you're thirsty. Go get it whenever you want. You don't need a water break. You just need you go get the water whenever. I don't What are the odds that every player on the ice right now needs water? I don't know that that's the case. That's not going to happen. So you get water when you need it and they'll get water when they need it, and I'll just keep this whole thing moving. And then there would be times where, and this is what I like too, is there would be times where I would have this practice going at breakneck speed, and there would be really no like transitions between drills and adding drills. Like I could do that on the fly, and you wouldn't even know. There would be no break in the actual action. The reps would continue to go, and I would just be changing it as we are going. I've done practices where there's literally no break. It just starts and it just gets going, and then I'm adding this piece, I'm changing this drill on the fly, and there's no break. And I used to take a lot of pride in that because that's so cool and it's so hard to do. And it was a way for me to really learn my craft. Then I realized, you know what? Like, I'm killing these guys. Like, the energy is dipping because there's just no break. You need to give them some kind of a break. So what I would do is I learned to peak the practice, and so I would try to get 2 or 3 peaks in a practice where it would build up, build up, build up, get to this like apex, and then I would bring it right down. And when I would bring it down, that's when we would have a discussion. I would talk about kind of what we had learned so far, get some reflection going, acknowledge some development with players, acknowledge some communications that I saw, just a short little soliloquy on what was going on, and then we'd start the next build. And we'd build it up, get it to its apex, get it to its peak, and then come down. And then I'd pull both those 2 peaks, put them together into one kind of culmination game or drill or whatever that kind of pulled all the pieces together, and then that's what we would end on. And so it just gave me a lot of different ways in which I could run my practice, and I could get the pacing exactly the way I wanted it. And depending what the team needed or what that group needed at that time, or how much time that I have with the group, now I could connect all these factors, and that would tell me how I want to pace things. So that's some ideas. It's certainly not all the ideas. It's hard to cram them all in. I should probably do another one of these on drill design to talk about even more of the details, but that's a good start.